Welcome to the Art Institute of Chicago, one of my favorite places in the city. I became a member back in 2016, the year I first moved to Chicago, and continued to renew my membership even during the time when I lived in St. Louis. You'll probably find me here once a month at a minimum, and often once a week, especially in the summer. I'll spend an hour revisiting some of my favorite works, or perhaps visiting new galleries, or even exploring one of the rotating exhibits. Then I'll head to the lower level for a glass of wine from the museum cafe, but we'll get to that later. First, let's see a few works of art that will appeal to the book lover in us all. Today's tour takes place in the Department of European Painting and Sculpture. This tour can be taken virtually or listened to during your visit to the museum. If you're actually at the museum, you'll see a grand staircase directly ahead. Walk up the stairs, continue straight toward the European Painting and Sculpture galleries directly in front of you. This department includes more than 4,000 works dating from the 12th through the late 19th century and includes a lot of the heavy hitters, including Degas, Monet, Manet, Renoir, Van Gogh, and even Gauguin. But today we'll visit 5 of my favorite paintings that feature readers. Let's get started. Because paintings move around occasionally, I'm not going to give directions to each individual painting, but feel free to ask any of the employees or volunteers at the museum. They are super helpful. Okay, let's get started with interrupted reading. This painting wins the prize for the most aptly titled painting. Have we not all made this face at a spouse who interrupted us just as the story was really beginning to take off? Or when the doorbell rings just a page before the end of the chapter? The Art Institute describes the mood of this painting as introspective and somewhat melancholic. Yeah, I don't think so. Any reader knows that the mood we feel after getting interrupted from a really good book is neither introspective nor melancholic, more like irritated or exasperated. I can just imagine the model was bored in the artist's studio, picked up a book, and was just getting lost in the story when the artist asked her to look his way so he could paint her expression. "Are you kidding me?" she says with her eyes. I'm also intrigued by the muted, monochromatic color palette, as if she was pulled unwillingly from the colorful world of her novel back into the reality of sitting still for an artist to capture her likeness. Everything about this painting screams, "Just let me read." In direct contrast to interrupted reading, it appears that woman reading was left undisturbed to enjoy her illustrated newspaper. The quick brushstrokes also lend to the idea that this scene was observed and recorded on the fly at one of the artist's favorite haunts, as it is described in a digital publication entitled Manet Paintings and Works on Paper at the Art Institute of Chicago. But, in fact, this is a work of fiction. The scene was actually carefully constructed to look like a cafe in Manet's garden. Does it change your perception of the work knowing the scene was staged? Also, did you notice the glass of beer sitting on the table next to her? Well, apparently, this seemingly small addition to the composition caused quite a stir, leading to a debate about the woman's social status. Reading a painting is a lot like reading a book. The author drops hints along the way as to what is going to happen in the plot in the same way an artist drops hints in his or her painting. According to the publication mentioned earlier, art lovers want to know, quote, "Is she a tart or a lady? An illiterate leaping through a magazine for the pictures, or a sophisticate perusing an exhibition review? Does her elegant toilette render her respectable or suspect?" The artist gave us no clues in the generic title of Woman Reading, which I think is the equivalent of a cliffhanger. If this were a novel, readers would be demanding a sequel. An artist known simply as Master of the Female Half-Lengths? I mean, was this the precursor to the artist formerly known as Prince? It seems very little is known about this artist, not even if the paintings attributed to this artist is just one person or a group of artists. The National Gallery has only this to say about the artist. Quote, "The so-called Master of the Female Half-Lengths is named after a painting of a concert of 3 female figures. He was the author or overseer of a large group of works. The studio was perhaps in Antwerp and had close connections with one artist, though the style is more related to that of others. None of his paintings are dated. I mean, how more vague can you get? So called, author or overseer, perhaps, connections with one but more related to another, not dated. Note that the date of this painting is listed as about 1530 because we can't be certain when exactly it was painted. He or she is so mysterious. Does this not remind you a bit of Elena Ferrante, author of My Brilliant Friend, whose identity remains unknown? Barnes& Noble has this great list of 5 of the most mysterious authors, including Elena Ferrante, B. Travin, Anne Radcliffe, Thomas Pynchon, and John 12 Hawkes. If this painting intrigued you, you'll definitely want to Google these authors to learn more about the mysteries behind them. This painting is of a young woman reading the love letters of Eloise, a female student, and Abelard, a French priest, which were posthumously published first in Latin in 1616 and then translated to French in 1693. That's when they really gained in popularity. The original letters do not exist, so there is some debate over their authenticity. However, the story goes that both Eloise and Abelard were prominent intellectuals of their time. 19-year-old Eloise was studying philosophy under Abelard, who was 18 years her senior, when they fell in love and began an affair. They had a child, but their affair was soon discovered, and Abelard was castrated, and Eloise entered a convent. So I can only imagine the lady depicted in this painting is thinking, oh great, another old man seducing a young woman. So cliche. Our final painting on this mini tour is called The Dressing Room. Madame Hessel, Lucy is her name, is the wife of the artist's salesman. She was also the artist's muse, confidant, and, you guessed it, mistress. I read in a Christie's auction lot essay that Lucy organized his social life, lunches with art critics, and visits to his studio, fulfilling an almost maternal role in her relationship with the artist. But then the description goes on to say that she was a friend, lover, confidant, muse, and mentor to the artist. So she apparently served lots of roles in his life. Anyway, about the painting. They are in Infreville, a French village in the Normandy region. She's in the dressing room, which is arguably an odd room to read in, don't you think? Perhaps she was hiding from children or even Edouard, trying to find a quiet moment to herself, perhaps? The artist probably thought she took forever to get ready, but in actuality, she was just leisurely reading the latest novel. The dressing room is also a very intimate room, not one just mere acquaintances would visit, so this painting clearly shows her in the light of a lover. So what are your favorite places to read? Have you ever found yourself hiding in an unlikely place, such as staying in your car or closet to read so as not to be interrupted? Thank you for joining us on this tour from interrupted reader to reading hiding in a dressing room. I hope you enjoyed thinking about a few of my favorite paintings from the perspective of a reader. I encourage you to explore more of the museum if you're visiting in person and treating yourself to a glass of wine in the museum cafe. If you're joining from home, then pour yourself a glass of wine and curl up with a good book. Thank you again for joining me. I'll see you next time.